Hey, it's James Nemeh with Spectrum Global Financial,
And Crystal Jenkins with Remax Downtown.
and welcome to Real Home Talk, where you kind of learn more about just not just the Florida market, but just things going on in it. And today
Yeah.
we actually have a really a topic that's not just plaguing Florida homeowners, but I mean homeowners across the nation.
Yeah. And one of those
Okay.
things that nobody really talks about until something happens, which is homeowners insurance. Everybody needs it. And nobody needs it until a hurricane happens or
Yeah.
something detrimental, right? Like, where's my policy?
No, you're right. It's almost like we set it and forget it. So after you close on a home, you know you needed it, you don't know why, and then you kind of just forget about it. But recently, we've been seeing just a lot of changes, not only in our industry but also the homeowners insurance industry. So we wanted to bring on an expert to kind of just open it up for everybody. And
Yeah.
yeah, without further ado, we want to welcome onto the show Marc Bernstein with Brokers Insurance.
Welcome,
Hi
Marc.
guys, thank you for having me. Happy to be here and go over some of the what's going on in our industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fan.
It's important. Homeowners insurance is very important. Very important.
Yeah, so let's talk about what is homeowners insurance. Like a lot of people are, they're familiar with auto insurance, familiar with medical insurance because everybody has to have it. But homeowners insurance with for people who are renting right now, maybe you have rental insurance. I remember in college people talked about it. I couldn't afford rental insurance. I didn't know what it was at all. So it was one of those things where you just kind of probably go without it. You're like, I didn't have anything to insure. I mean, what did I have? Like a 13-inch TV or a old broken down guitar. And
Or
so it's
maybe
like,
a
what?
stereo system, right? That was my
Yeah.
thing.
And I'm like, I don't need coverage on that. But Marc, maybe you can give us a little bit of insight as to, what homeowners insurance is, and then kind of as well, the other insurances that you might cover as well.
Okay, yeah. So homeowners insurance basically covers your house for damages that would happen, and it covers a wide range of damages. You can have water damage, wind damage, a tree falls on your house, somebody can come over and get hurt. You can have theft. You can have a lot of different things that would happen to your home, and a homeowners insurance policy is going to cover you in those situations. The reason they're required when you take out a loan is the mortgage company has an interest in the home, and if something happens to the home, they want to know that there's going to be an insurance policy to replace whatever happened because they have a financial interest in the home. Once you no longer have a mortgage, you're not required to carry homeowners insurance, which would be a very big mistake. And
Yeah.
most people, the biggest investment they make in their life is the home that they purchase, and having it protected properly against events that can happen is one of the most important things they can do for their financial security, as well as their liabilities, and just the fact that peace of mind in case something happens, there's going to be a policy there to help fix and get them back to whole.
A hundred
Um,
percent. Sorry, Marc, to touch on that. I mean, you're absolutely right, especially if you live in Florida, where I mean, we get torrential downpours. Roof ages aren't lasting as long as they would, and costs have increased across the board. So, can you imagine having to come out of pocket to replace something like that if something happens? Like if you have to replace your own roof, and you don't have the safety net of insurance, which us as lenders require no matter what, because something happens to the house, we need to make sure it's taken care of. But owning it free and clear, you touched on something really important there, because you're like, oh, I'm going to save a few bucks a year by not having homeowners insurance, and then something happens. I mean, that's just, like you said, a big mistake.
Yeah, even as a real estate agent, I recommend people to get homeowners insurance. But most importantly, is because everybody don't think about a rainy day. They don't think about insurance. I mean, it's kind of something that everybody wants, but nobody wants to pay for. So,
Yeah.
so I
and
think
that's
it's important to do that, right?
Yeah, and everyone wants it. Nobody wants to pay for it because it's not like a tangible item. They're not getting a shiny new phone or a shiny toy to play with. They're just paying all this money, and they think, well, what is it being used for? And
Yeah.
you had touched on, the roofs and stuff, and that's one of the issues plaguing our market is people filing claims on roofs that really shouldn't be claims. But there are situations where damage occurs to roofs, and the insurance company should be responsible for replacing it, so you wouldn't have to do it on your own dime. My favorite saying in insurance has been, since I've started in this industry in 2003, And I think it kind of hits home on what you guys are talking about, which is it doesn't matter who insures you until it does. And
Yeah.
that's always
Wow.
something that I like to tell clients. You want to save a couple of bucks and go with a company that's maybe not as reputable or maybe not as strong financially. Well, if something happens, you're going to reap the benefits of what you chose. And, sometimes like you don't have a tangible thing here, but going with a better company and better coverages on your policy might cost you more money and you may not see the return on investment. But if a rainy day does happen or a catastrophe hits your area, you're going to be happy that you spent that money because that's when you'll need your insurance company and you'll be happy you went with a better company.
Mhm.
So that's
Oh,
always been my favorite saying to clients who talk about price. I just want the cheapest price. And I said, I can get you the cheapest price, but it doesn't matter until it does. And at that point, it's too late.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
I
And
agree.
yeah, and I love that you touched on roof replacement, like all the roof claims going in there. So is that why our homeowners insurance has been increasing? So people have seen that mortgage rates have been increasing, food costs, gas, everything has been going up in price. So has inflation had any impact on it, or is it just a lot of claims, a lot of insurance companies pulling out of areas? What is the main root of why we're seeing, like, Crystal, your policy has gone up since renewal,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. I'm a realtor and people think that I'm exempt because I'm a realtor, that my insurance will not go up. Well, let me tell you something. For me, it's like, okay, well, I have the same house. It didn't change. So,
Yeah.
but my insurance went up. So I had to sit there and think, have a discussion with my representative and say, hey, what has happened, And so, if you could highlight that for us, Mark, give us some more details about that. I would love to hear it.
yeah, those are great questions. So the first question about does inflation have a factor on rates? It does to a degree, because what we're finding now is a lot of policies that we wrote several years ago, the replacement cost on those has gone up dramatically because of cost of goods and labor. So if your house used to be insured for 300,000 5 years ago, in today's market, it probably needs to be insured for like 450. So when you get rate increases because these companies are losing money, and then you have to increase your coverage by 30-40%, it's like, wow, I just got hit with all of this rate, but it's because now you're insuring your house for more value because the value of the goods on your home have gone up so significantly. So that's the way inflation has affected the rates a little bit. But the main issue that's plaguing Florida is the roof pandemic and litigation. To throw a couple of stats at you, in 2021, the state of Florida had 116,000 first-party lawsuits against homeowners insurance companies. 116,000. The
Wow.
next, the next closest state was California with 840.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
The entire country combined had 24,000 first-party lawsuits against homeowners insurance companies, except for Florida. Florida had 116. So when we're getting 5
Unbelievable.
times the amount of lawsuits as the rest of the country combined, we have a man-made problem that's plaguing our industry, which is what's happening. We've had 6 companies go insolvent this year, several last year, and probably another 10 or 15 that are teetering on the borderline of whether or not they're still going to stay in business.
Mm.
And if we don't put a stop to these one-way attorneys' fees and the fact that these attorneys are basically leeching onto people's policies, ripping off the insurance company and legally extorting them because they set the laws to favor them, our industry is not going to get better. It's going to continue to deteriorate and get worse. And those rates that you had a couple of years ago that now were 3, 4, 5 times as much as they were are going to continue to go up. Citizens, which is a state-backed company, is over 1 million policies now for the first time since 2006 after
Wow.
all those hurricanes happened. And they're growing by hundreds of thousands of policies a quarter. And that's not a sustainable model.
Mhm.
Citizens has $11 billion in reserves right now. And last check, they had about 400 billion in liabilities.
Wow.
The only company in the state that is not required to carry sufficient reinsurance to cover a major catastrophe is Citizens. And this year they only filled 36% of the reinsurance tower, which means in the event of a catastrophic claim, every single homeowner who has Citizens can be assessed up to 45% of their premium in a one-time assessment on top of their annual premium. And it's pretty scary because basically you have a bunch of people in Florida who are, for lack of a better word, reinsuring themselves against a major catastrophe, and they don't even know that that's happening.
Mm.
That
Citizens is also capped at what rate increases they can take every year, even though they're vastly underfunded. They were just denied a rate increase this year, and then were forced to not non-renew 7,000 policies that they wanted to non-renew because of the condition of the roof. So there's a lot of bad stuff going on. We had a special session this year, and they eliminated the fee multiplier, which was huge. But
Fantastic.
the reason these attorneys continue to file lawsuits, and it's a problem, is they file as many lawsuits as they can possibly get their hands on. Even if 90% of them go away and nothing ever ends up happening, because they're not responsible for paying the attorney's fees of the other insurance company. If they lose nothing but the time it took their paralegal to file a motion. And when they win, they have been getting these ridiculous fees plus a fee multiplier on every claim they file. So we had a couple of claims in our book of business last year where the homeowner got less than $1,000 after a year of litigation, and the attorneys walked away with $250,000 on that claim.
So how can we do something about that? Because ultimately, from listening to you, I'm hearing that the consumer is still paying for somebody else's pocket to get fat, lack of a better term. And I'm sitting here like, okay, I mean, I've had some clients of mine who were selling their home. They just had some random person come knock on their door and say, hey, your roof looks like it's bad. You want to replace it? Well, I can get you a new roof with no problem whatsoever. And it might not be with an attorney, it's a mediator that's doing the claim, and possibly we're going to do it for free. You don't have to come out of pocket of anything. Well, nothing is free. Or at least the last time I know something was free, it was God, and he had gave us some oxygen, and that's all I ever heard to be free, And so
there is nothing that's free. And to touch on that, this is where a lot of those lawsuits come from, which is why this is a roofing pandemic has caused it. First of all, never in the history of insurance was it common for somebody to knock on your door and tell you to file a claim against your insurance. Because most of those roofs that they're saying they can get for free or wear and tear, they're not actually damaged by a covered peril, a one-time storm event that damages them. To give you context, the state of Florida brought in a couple of roofing professionals during the special session, and they talked about that for a new roof to be damaged by hail to the point where it needs a replacement, the hail has to be the size of a softball. We haven't had hail the size of a softball in Florida since 1992.
Yeah.
So all these hail claims are...
Oh my goodness, that is incredible. I mean, to see that we have so many falsely accused hail claims. And Marc, I think we kind of lost you, or you froze on
There we are.
Now
Am
you're
I
back. back now?
Yes,
Yeah.
So what happens is these roofs that are 15, 20 years old, they look like they've been hit with hail because they're just wear and tear. So if you took a new roof and you took a 15-year-old roof and the new roof got hit with hail and the 15-year-old roof didn't, be able to tell the difference between the two unless you're a licensed roofer that has a lot of experience. It's very difficult to tell, which is how they get these claims to go through. But what happens is they knock on your door, they tell you you're going to get a free roof. They don't know if your insurance company is going to deny it or not because they know there's a high probability that it's wear and tear and not a real covered peril. When the roofing company sends in the claim and the insurance company denies it, those roofing companies are already contracted with attorneys. They just send it to the attorney. And when they send it to the attorney, it's automatic lawsuit. They don't even look at the claim. They don't look at the roof, nothing. They just file the lawsuit because they know insurance companies are scared of those massive payouts. So when it goes to a lawsuit, 9 times out of 10, the insurance company is going to take the easy way out and just settle. But at that point, now they've paid $60,000 for a roof. They should have paid nothing. And
wow.
when you apply that over the entire state of Florida, these insurance companies are losing money. There was one profitable company last year. And when I say profitable, I mean, that means it did not lose money. They were, so an insurance company, typically for them to be healthy and make a profit, they need to pay out roughly about 35 cents on the dollar for every dollar they take in premium and claims. That's where their number needs to be. The number one company last year in Florida was at 99.6%. That was the best. So they're still 60% off of where they are to actually make money and run a company. When I say they didn't lose money, they brought in more money than they paid out in claims, but they did lose money because they still had to pay their staff. They still had to run a company. They still had to pay their agents. They still had to hire all these inspectors to go out and look at all the different claims and adjust on them. And so for these companies, and that was the best, a lot of others are in 115, 120 range. So when a company's paying out $1.20 on every dollar they're bringing in, that's just not a sustainable model.
No.
I
And,
agree.
and then when you add in the fact that these companies have to get all this reinsurance, and the reinsurance companies don't want to deal with the litigation nightmare that is Florida, the reinsurance markets raised rates 70% this year on Florida carriers, which is putting their, and what happens is, so how reinsurance works is, let's say you have X amount of homes, they require your reinsurance tower to be Y. So when these companies' reinsurance rates went up so high, a lot of these carriers had to get off of a huge chunk of their risks, which is those non-renewals, in order for their reinsurance tower to be sufficient for them to be financially stable. And then the other thing that happened is, even if carriers didn't have to non-renew, they hit their reinsurance tower for their current book of business, but they don't have any room to take on new business. So now they're not writing new business, and a lot of these companies are closed for new business, which then in turn, you have less companies offering prices. They're getting adversely selected because there's no options. So they have to raise their rates to prevent being adversely selected on homes that they shouldn't be insuring. And basically it's a mess. I think everyone knows what needs to be done to fix it. It's just a matter of whether or not that happens. If it doesn't get fixed, rates are going to continue to go up. Options are going to be limited. Homeowners are going to have a really hard time in this state. If it does get fixed and they take away one-way attorney's fees, this industry would be basically fixed overnight, because the amount of investment money that would flow into the state would be huge. So,
And I think you
but
touched on a
everyone's
lot
holding
of,
back on the sidelines until we fix the underroot of the problem, which is, the litigation and roof nightmare that we're facing.
absolutely. And I was going to say, you touched on a lot of great things there, especially the fact that, so right now, after we close on a home, I get a call a year later because homeowners insurance policies are no longer renewing. So the company has either gone insolvent, they can't write new policies, or they're pulling out of the area because they're like, hey, we don't want any more of this risk. And the ones that are staying, your premium is doubling. So all of a sudden in 2019, I had a policy, it was 1,200. Following year, it went up to 2,400. And then all of a sudden it's going up to 36. And you could shop it around, which brings us to another point. So when you're looking for insurance, let's say your policy is gone, your current insurer is not going to renew you, you're going to need a new policy. The good news is you don't have to start over. So like Marc, he's an insurance agent, so he can rewrite policies. He already knows what's going on in the market. Like he was saying, everything I'm seeing right now is you might have one, it's almost like you're limited in choices because they have one carrier that's still here, and then you have Citizens. And like most policies that nobody wants to underwrite, it's going under Citizens. But like you said, it's almost like a straw that's breaking a camel's back. It just keeps piling on to one carrier. And I mean, that's a risk. That's just, let's hope it just doesn't become a real risk anytime soon.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Yeah. For us, we represent about 40 home carriers, and on any given risk in solo counties, which is Seminole, Orange, Lake, and Osceola, we maybe have one or two options other than Citizens, depending on the house and the age. I mean, if it's new construction, we have a couple options, but if it's over 5 years old, virtually impossible. And, but here's the thing, in times like this, when insurance is tough, having a broker that understands the market and knows where your risk fits, and has an idea of what kind of coverage you need or what you need to do to your home to become eligible for a better product is extremely important to clients. And, as bad as homeowners is, we also do auto insurance, commercial, and life insurance, and we have great rates and products on that. So really, I would tell you, for any of your clients, make sure they're with somebody that understands the market, who's been there, who has access to all the different carriers, because even though it's extremely difficult and it's an extremely hard market right now, there are still ways to get things done. But to talk about your point about we have a big problem, well, Citizens has been the number one writer in Tri-County down south for a long time because of weather-related issues and now fraud-related issues as well. But I talked about how if Citizens runs out of money, they assess their policyholders up to 45%. So imagine being a homeowner in Miami, having maybe a 2,000 square foot home that Citizens is charging you $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year to insure because they deem you high risk, and that's the cheapest price you can find. And then we have another hurricane like Hurricane Michael that hits the Panhandle, 500 miles away from where you live. You didn't even get bad weather, And then you get hit with a $7,000-8,000 assessment to pay for homes that are outside of the state to fix what happened. I think there'll be people in the streets with pitchforks ready to fight the government for allowing this to transpire. And the worst part is because Citizens is capped at a rate increase every year, a lot of times right now, even if there is other options, Citizens is the cheapest, and most clients want to go with the cheapest option, not understanding what they're actually signing up for. So again, that brings you to the point of you need to be with an agent that can understand, hey, don't be penny smart and dollar dumb. You know, it's worth paying a little bit extra not to go with the state-backed company if you can avoid it.
Well,
If you can't
that's a
avoid it,
good
we're
point.
still there for you. So,
That's a very good point, Mark. I think it's important to understand, you know, when you're getting homeowners insurance, you need to get at least a minimum of 3 quotes, you know, and don't look at the cheapest, don't look at the most expensive, you know, kind of go in the middle of the road. I think the middle of the road is a good balancer. Don't you agree?
I do, and I also think that the 3-quote rule is good in a sense, but it also is bad in a sense. And I can give you an example. A lot of times when we get leads or referrals from lenders, they're sending it to multiple different insurance brokers. Well, all those brokers know they're going up against other people, and whether or not we want to admit it, we know most of those clients are only looking at the bottom line. So a lot of these agents have gotten really sneaky about the first coverage A, which is usually the only coverage they look at, may be the same, but underneath it, they may limit your water, not give you replacement cost on contents, not put important things in the policy that a normal policyholder or homeowner will have no idea just by looking at a quote that stuff is missing, because they want to come in with the cheapest rate and get that client secured. So what I've done with a lot of the lender referrals that we get is we will show you 3 different options to let your client pick. But now that I know I'm not going up against price from another client, another agency to win that business, I'm going to make sure this coverage is what the client actually needs. So that's one thing, because I think it's really hard. And, you know, we've been kind of programmed in this industry for the last 15, 20 years to, you know, there's always a cheap price out there. Let's go get the cheapest price and the client's happy and it makes the numbers work on the deal. But that's not always what's best for the client in the long run. And we've seen that come back to bite people where they went with another client or another agent because they thought the policy was the same. Later to find out after a claim, they didn't have replacement cost on their contents. And what that means is contents is if you take your house, turn it upside down, shake it, anything that would fall out is your contents. And having a replacement cost on that means, let's say you buy a 50-inch screen TV for $2,000 now to hang in your living room. Well, 5 years from now, that TV is basically worthless because technology changes. So if you're not getting replacement costs, which would mean old for new, so you have enough money to go buy a brand new 50-inch TV a couple of years later, they're going to give you the value of a 5-year-old TV, which is nothing. So when you take that across all of your belongings, what ends up happening is if you don't have replacement cost on your contents, you're not going to get enough money to buy all your stuff back. So they didn't know they didn't have this on the policy. It was something that was easily hidden on a quote, and they went with it because it was a couple bucks cheaper, and then it ended up costing them a lot of money because they had a total loss, and now their stuff was not being replaced.
No,
So,
Mark. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because this morning I was talking to my processing team about it, because when we get homeowners insurance quotes, you're getting 2 different agencies. They're sending the same quote from Citizens, and then one premium's a lot lower than the other. And we know this because we're in the industry. We're like, okay, they're cutting back on coverages here. And that's the biggest difference. But like you said, a consumer who looks at it, they just see the bottom line. Oh, I'm paying $2,000 for this one, $2,600 for this one. But in the short term, it looks great. In the long term, it's like you said, you're backing yourself up against corner in case something happens, you know? So it's extremely interesting. I'm glad you touched on that.
Anytime you get a quote from the same carrier, the underlying underwriting carrier from 2 different agencies, and the price is different, whichever price is lower has missing coverages, because every single agent has the exact same system. And if they put in the exact same information, they're going to get the exact same price to the penny. So theirs is cheaper. They did not apply extra discounts. They don't have a better relationship with the carrier where they can get you a lower rate. They literally just cut something out of your policy that you can't find.
So which brings to another point. To me, I feel like a lot of people, you know, don't know what to ask. What do they need in homeowners insurance? Like, everybody has what they want, like they want a brand new house if it burns down. That's my first thought. That's like fundamental, how I would think. And then the second thing they think about is roof. I want to make sure my roof is good. So those are two things: burn down or roof. That's the only thing I would put in my mind. That's important, but that's totally not the case. I mean, I don't know. What is like the number, the number of things that you think that people need to look at, like, or understand that they need, and to make sure that they have a good coverage for their house?
Yeah, that might be more beneficial from a lending standpoint. And Mark, thank you. I know we're running over time here. So I apologize for taking it up, but from a lending standpoint, we only care about dwelling coverage. How much is it going to cost to rebuild the home? But like Crystal was saying, a lot of borrowers don't know what they need outside of, okay, my lender's happy with dwelling coverage. What do I care about everything else? Would you mind just touching on that briefly? And then we'll
so
definitely.
there's a lot that goes in, and I'm good on time. So as long as you guys want to be here, I'm happy to stay.
Okay.
Basically, when it comes to a homeowner's policy, there's a lot that goes into it. The number one suggestion I can make is, if you guys are working with clients and they select a policy or an agency they want to go with, encourage them to call that agent and go over what's included in that policy. Have a conversation with the agent, because a lot of times when we have a conversation with these new clients, we can figure out, based on talking to them, what their risk tolerance is, what's more important to them on a policy, and we can customize it to fit what their needs are versus just a cookie cutter. Here's what I would do if this was my house, because not everyone's the same. And some people are more tolerant of a higher deductible to save money because they are able to, they'll take that risk. And some people are more tolerant on taking, hey, you know what, I know my roof is old, so I'll do an actual cash value on my roof and I'll do replacement cost on everything else because I know at some point I'm going to be paying for this roof. So I think that there's so much that goes into it. It's hard to just give you like a checklist, but what I would encourage them to do is call the insurance agent that is going to be writing that policy. Let them talk to them for a couple minutes and make sure that all their concerns are met. But I guess the biggest thing would be coverage amount, deductible, replacement cost. And then the other issue that a lot of companies do now is they either limit water to 10,000 or they exclude water altogether. So you want to make sure water is covered. And then, outside of that, you would want to make sure that your liability is at 300,000 if it's possible. And, I think those are some really good highlighted points, but the best suggestion I would have is to talk to an agent and go over it and make sure they understand what they're getting. They understand what they're not getting, which is almost as important. So as long as they have that understanding going into it, there's no surprises down the line and no nasty phone calls back to the realtor or lender because something happened and it's not what they thought it was.
Right.
And then also just, being with a broker that can adapt and change with the market. So what might be good for them this year may not be good next year or 2 or 3 years down the road. So building that rapport with your agent when it comes time to renew your policy, being able to feel comfortable having that conversation again and making sure it's the right policy for them is extremely important because things change in this industry and they change quickly.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
That's true. That is really true that it changes. So it's not like you should have homeowners insurance that you just make the policy, basically, have a carrier and just hit it, get it and forget it. It's not that kind of situation is what I'm
set it
hearing.
and forget it days are over.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, in the mid 2000s, if you gave me an address and you had a pulse, I could get you a policy that was going to cover everything and be really inexpensive, and we wouldn't have to talk for 10 years and your policy would be the same. Those days are gone for me. So until the
100%.
pendulum swings back the other way, it is not going to be like that. So I would also encourage your clients not only to talk to their agents at the first point of sale, but also every year they're going to get their renewal 30 to 45 days before it renews.
Mhm.
I would start making it a point to tell these clients, when you get that renewal, don't just chuck it in the mail because your lender pays for it. Look at it, call your agent, make sure it's still a good policy, make sure that it covers everything that you want, because a lot of these companies too, they will change the coverage inside the policy language at time of renewal, and they'll bury it 15 pages deep in the policy that they
Oh my
send you
goodness.
this thick, that nobody is going to sit down and read.
Isn't that against the law?
Well, no, because technically they're notifying you by writing.
Oh my
They're
goodness.
sending you a renewal. So that's why when you get your renewal, it is definitely in your best interest to pick up the phone and spend 5 minutes and talk to your agent and make sure this policy is still good for you for the next year.
Well,
Now,
that's pretty important information right there. I mean, this is not peanuts right here.
no, not at all. Hey, Marc, I just want to thank you. I know you've been super generous with your time. Tell us, so if somebody wants a homeowner's insurance quote, how could they reach you? What's the best way to get a quote or review their policy or talk to you on where to get started?
They can call or email. Our email address, or my email address, is Marc, M-A-R-C, at Orlando Brokers Insurance, all spelled out, .com. I figured I would get the longest email address there is. And our phone number is 407-862-6464. They can call or email us anytime. We have 8 people on our team, and anyone they talk to can help them. We all work as a team there, and be happy to help any clients you have, or anyone that's just curious to know what they have on their policy. We'll take the time to review it, even if they're not a client of ours, and make sure that they're good to go and comfortable with what they have.
Fantastic. And you guys service all of Florida? And is it, it's not just homeowners insurance, you guys deal with everything essentially, right?
We do everything but health insurance. So we do home, auto, commercial, and life insurance. And just as bad as the homeowners market is, we are extremely competitive on auto and all your toys and your motorcycles, boats, RVs, umbrellas. Life insurance, we write through 500 companies, can basically match or beat anything that you can get out in the field. And same thing on the commercial side. And we service the whole state of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, you know what? One thing, I guess this is not a part of our conversation, but I would love the opportunity to possibly have it where we have an event and our clients are invited to come, because we try to keep our clients informed on what's happening with the market. And anytime we have a vendor that we love, that's just pretty awesome, we want to share the information. And you mentioned that you would definitely be able to talk to our clients. So, I mean, I think it would be great to have an event where we have them come and we just do hors d'oeuvres, and, have your team come out and explain, let them bring their policy, and you can kind of sit down and talk to them and highlight the things that they might need or might consider doing for the next renewal. And we might need to talk to you about that a little offline. That would just be beneficial, because everybody just needs to be informed. It's you don't know what you do not know.
Yep.
That's a great point. That's actually a great place for us to wrap it up on. Guys, you are all fantastic. Can't thank you enough. Marc, especially for your time to coming in, enlightening us, and just giving this amazing benefit to our listeners and our clients out there. I mean, it's real. That's where it comes down to. This is real home talk. We are completely transparent, and the people we bring on here are transparent. So you kind of see what's going on in the kitchen. It's not just, hey, the meal's out, you have to eat it how it is. It's like, no, there's a reason it is the way it is. And just want to thank you, Crystal. Always awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a delight. I mean, I think it's always good to be able to bring some information, topics that are happening in the marketplace. And, Marc has been phenomenal to educate us, and can't wait to hear a little bit more about that offline. Thank you so much again. Thank you, James. We're here serving clients here and enjoy doing it, and can't wait till the next time we get a chance to talk.
Yeah. And don't forget, that's Marc, M-A-R-C, at orlandobrokersinsurance.com. Thanks again, Marc. And we're all going to be in touch soon. Everyone, hope you have a blessed day.
All right.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right. You're welcome. Take care now. Bye-bye.